We are all products of our environment and parental influence during our formative childhood years. But not all parents provide support and encouragement or create the warm, nurturing homes their children desperately need to flourish. When we were young, we learned to cope with the debilitating household dynamics of power, control, secrets, blame, and fear. But now we are adults, and the pain avoidance skills we once mastered serve only to perpetuate the pain. Recently, I visited the maternity ward at a local hospital. As I stood with my nose next to the glass, looking at the newborn babies, I was awed by their obvious vulnerability and innocence. How fragile and wholesome they seemed. I could not pick out one's addict, robber, or street person, one murderer or wife beater, one manic depressive, schizophrenic, or psychotic. Was I just kidding myself? Was I watching an illusion under which lay the seeds of violence and disorder? I think not. Should you want to visit the product of pure unconditional love, as I suggest you came here, to see the purity of this little tiny being nestled in their blankets. Hold them with loving care, feed and bath them, keep them warm. Safe and secure, and the miracle of life will flourish before you. But what happens and where do things go wrong? Could it be that some are secretly flawed, or are they changed by their environment and the behavior of the people they depend on? Does the farmer blame the seeds where his harvest is poor, or is he realistic enough to know that if he wants a healthy and productive crop, he'd better be attentive to soil conditions, weather, fertilizer, pruning, and the like, providing the care required? I'm not naive enough to discount that there are genetic influences on everyone's character, but I do not believe that there are bad seeds. Although our society believes that some people are born bad, in each case, the dilemma or disorder can be traced back to the soil conditions, weather, and fertilizer of a person's early life. It's arrogant of me to think that I am less than I really am. I am codependent. I believe the degree to when I matter is proportional to how much I matter to others. I am devoid of a healthy sense that I matter just because I am. I depend on conditions outside of me to tell me who I am, what I think, and how I feel. My identity springs what happened in my life and the mess of me.
Game.
And those around me. My codependency is the result of my having a false self-identity, which means that I am missing a sense of value, self-worth, and importance, the necessity for a healthy, real self-identity. Consequently, I do not believe that I deserve good things or success or that I matter as an entity unto myself.
Shame can be defined as feeling that one's being has been judged by an authority as dishonorable or disgraceful. When I have what is called a shame attack, I feel that my inadequacy, unimportance, and sense of being have been exposed for all to see. If someone sees this truth as I perceive it, they see me as the non-deserving failure that I feel I am, and I sink into a depressive sadness. My feelings spiraling downward until I cry out, "What's the use?" Suicide then seems like a sensible solution. Most actions and decisions in my life have been an attempt to ward off or hide this false self from myself and everyone else. My shame and fear seem to feed off each other. Together they eat away at me. Somehow, I have felt that what I've done and who I have become is my fault. I didn't realize it was not true until I uncovered the cause of my shame-based codependency, which is rooted in how my false self was imposed on me, impeding the development of my real self. Healing the past. I will make a statement that will aid your healing if you will allow yourself to believe it. Who you are and what you become is not your fault. I'll go on to say that you had no choice but to become who you are and to do what you've done. It couldn't have been any different. At birth, I believe you, like me, were dropped into a family that dictated who you think you are and all your subsequent behaviors and actions. Since then, you've more than likely been in somewhat of a robotic trance, replaying your family of origin experience. It gives credence to the statement, an unexamined life is not worth living. It's important to note how my parents' and sisters' actions and messages reflected shame as opposed to guilt. Guilt arises from something we do. Shame internalizes guilt into our very being, making it a statement and therefore judgment about who we are. Their behavior and responses toward me inflicted shame when I made mistakes, broke their rules, violated their beliefs, and failed to meet their expectations. My mom's, dad's, and sister's responses were judgments that told me there was something wrong with my very being rather than simply with what I did. Abuse disguised as love. If love has an opposite, it is shame. Since love gives value and shame takes value away, shame is about feeling like we've been judged a failure as a person, that we have failed at being what we were supposed to be. We become ashamed of who we are, what we know or don't know, and what we do. We sense that we are flawed and defective, that something is and has always been wrong with us. Unrealistic fears become our constant companions. Society supports dysfunction. For many of us, it is difficult to identify how shame was caused in our families because most of the negative messages that judge us are commonplace in our society. A common family and social dysfunction is what I call the blame and shame game. It's become standard practice to blame others or conditions for what's happening or happened. Blaming the victim has become commonplace. The avoidance of accountability by responsible parties is the norm, and shame-based people, not knowing any better, get caught in the crossfire. I was often blamed for, and therefore made responsible for, situations and feelings that didn't belong to me. But I didn't understand that the game was unfair and twisted. I'm amazed at the power they accused me of having when I had no rights, didn't count, and wasn't important. Phrases like the following scapegoated me, making me feel as though I was a bad influence or had a negative impact on others. I see their whispered use in our society. Who we are is confirmed by how others treat us, and this validation becomes our self-concept, subject to further confirmation. Our self-concept then becomes the basis of our beliefs, from which we make our choices in life. A negative self-concept will foster unhealthy choices, setting a precedent for a self-defeating lifestyle. And since we live in a society full of self-centered fear and shame-based people trying to hide their own shame and prove they're okay, our negative self-concept is frequently confirmed and supported. The more is the more it becomes a seemingly indelible truth. Confronting the false self. As people ashamed of who we are, we created and protect a make-believe identity to counteract and hide our painful inner truth. We try to make dreams, fantasies, and illusions our reality and use any means to keep them alive. If you, like me, learned in your childhood that little you think or do is acceptable or okay, you have probably looked around you in an attempt to find out what works for other people, hoping to mimic their behavior. I searched endlessly, hoping to find tools that would make my life work. I was always willing to compromise or abandon me for the sake of something or someone else that might change things. I found myself with few convictions. I was generally willing to give up mine for your sake, or their sake, or whatever sake, in an effort to be accepted or acknowledged, to belong or feel secure. No one supported or encouraged me to develop healthy boundaries or convictions for myself. They demanded that I abandon mine for theirs if I wanted to belong or feel loved. I relate all too well to the comment, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. I was either blindly compliant or in an unwarranted conflict with others, fighting for something without knowing what it was. I now know that my fight came out of my need for self-respect and the inherent quest for my real self, which I didn't know how to find. I've since learned that self-respect is an earned commodity, derived from standing up for one's own value system. It is a cornerstone of self-love. My degree of self-esteem is inversely proportional to how much I compromise that which is in my own best interest. The more I compromise, the lower my self-esteem is. So if I had to give up my human rights for the sake of getting my basic needs met, I could not gain self-respect or self-esteem. My shame-based codependent condition caused me to feel that I was inadequate and incapable. This truth seriously undermined my ability to survive on my own and compelled me to feel very insecure. My internal voice said, if I am left alone with only my own devices, without help, I will not make it. I will not be able to take care of myself by myself. The resultant feelings of fear were overwhelming, causing excessive self-centeredness. I needed to link up with someone who would help me survive. I became susceptible to anyone or any condition that I thought might help me to make it. In this vulnerable frame of mind, I ran a huge risk of falling prey to people who were only interested in using others. These people look strong on the outside, keeping their fears hidden while looking for a hostage, to help them feel more secure. If we have been able to develop a strong ego, called alter ego, we become arrogant know-it-alls and victimizers. If not, we become compliant subordinates and frequently find ourselves in a victim role. Most of us bounce back and forth between the two, feeling less than or better than, but rarely equal to, those around us. It's interesting to know that although these external personalities are opposites, the fear and shame-ridden core of their false self-identity is the same. The quest to develop the self-righteous alter ego is an attempt to avoid the depressive, shame-ridden reality of the false self. Shame-based people often become prey to other shame-based persons. Sadly enough, some will attack the vulnerability of another in a desperate, unmerciful attempt to prove themselves and others that they are better or okay. This cycle of shame protection is a cause of widespread discord in our society, keeping us stuck in the problem. There is a hope for change and recovery. Recognize your own worth. It began for me when I started to realize that I was a precious worthwhile human being, not because of what I did or knew, but just because I was. We are human beings, not human doings, and we don't need to compromise ourselves. We are entitled to be loved unconditionally and are so loved by our Creator. The negative judgment we've suffered is the cause of our dysfunction, and it has made us doubt our human preciousness. Love is judgment's opposite, validating wholeness and humanness. It confirms that we are special creations of our Creator, made in His or her image likeness. Love tells us that we are deserving of joy, inner peace, and oneness, just the way we are, as a given, not something to achieve. Love is not just a word, it is a state of being and an action that honors, respects, and validates the preciousness and importance of oneself and others without expectations. I was taught that I was a subordinate being, that everyone and everything counted more than I did and therefore should be considered before me. A voice deep inside of me has screamed, how dare I put me first and take care of me? When I do, I feel like I'm doing the wrong thing and very selfish. My goal has been to change this message and understand and believe that I have a right to my place on this planet, equal to anyone else. I am determined to stand for my rights of being, as accorded by my Creator, to honor my best interests and highest good. I am determined to embrace a new and profound truth that identifies me in divine likeness as pure love. No person, place, or thing that is or ever has been on this planet is more important or valuable than you or I. Examine your childhood. The journey out of our fear and shame-based false selves into our real selves begins when we look at the reality of our childhoods. Your critical self-talk probably will tell you that your childhood wasn't that bad. It will tell you that mom and dad did the best they could, that you should forgive them and get on with it. This kind of self-talk honors the critical voices of our parents and older siblings, but ignores the expression of our inner children. It is time to reverse the trend and honor the infant, child, and adolescent voices in us, voices we have so long denied. These voices form the foundation of our real selves. Feel free to experience and express your feelings of anger, pain, and sadness as you unfold the truth about your family history. Write your feelings down. Talk about them with people empathetic to your cause. You might feel afraid or bad in doing so, but please continue with it. Expressing and acknowledging your feelings offers you a chance of finding your real self maybe for the first time. Know that to forgive without first experiencing and expressing your truth will trap you in your false self, negating your real self. After you have dealt with the feelings from your past, I believe you will gain a whole new understanding, one that will be your gateway to forgiveness. I hope you can garner the necessary courage to confront the messages that denied your worth, your importance, your uniqueness. Doing so will give you the validation you have yearned for. It will allow you to own a new truth. Honor yourself. Start focusing on yourself and what's good for you, instead of on others. Understand that you count and you matter. Acting on these principles may feel strange, but it's time to do whatever it takes to care for and honor yourself. I can't truly be there for anyone else unless I'm taking care of me first. I've said to myself, wouldn't anyone expect me to do whatever I need to do, take care of myself? Healthy, caring people would. Those around you might not like it when you begin to take care of yourself. They will possibly get mad or threaten abandonment in response to your new behavior. Their responses essentially will be saying, how dare you take care of you instead of me and what I want? Know that you are a human being, not a human doing. That being you is enough. Recognize mistakes. Come to know that your picker is probably broken. That is, you're not capable of picking people or situations that will respect you or value your best interests or your highest good. The people and situations you pick are more than likely familiar, meaning family related. We choose friends and acquaintances who are similar to mom, dad, and our siblings, and pick work or social environments that mimic our family structure and the behavior within it. If you can identify the similarities between your past and present situations, you will understand that you have been in a robotic trance since getting out of your family pinball machine. Trust your gut. Now that you understand why your picker is probably broken, begin searching for your intuitive ability to make the right choices for yourself. Deep within you, underneath the familiar self-defeating voices, is an intuitive voice that will always tell you what is right and best for you. Your gut will let you know. Begin listening for this still quiet voice while instructing the others. Shut up. When dealing with another person, ask yourself, does this person have the desire or ability to respect who I am and honor my best interests? If not, examine your involvement. Should the other party persist, feel free to say, this just won't work for me. Without explaining or feeling guilty, I've come to realize that no can be a complete sentence. Establish boundaries. My boundaries are invisible layers of energy or spirit substance that surround me at all times. In essence, they separate me from you, giving me a spot on the planet. They let me mingle with others while giving me control over how other people affect me. Boundaries protect me and my space, and I decide what to let through and what to keep out. Reconsider your values. Understand that feelings of guilt are only applicable when you violate your value system. As codependents living in a false self, we often feel guilty when we fail to live up to another's expectations or by their value system. The environment that instilled our subservient false self in us prohibited us from choosing our own values. Our parents insisted that their values become ours, which set us up to fail their declared expectations. Guilt then became shame, and shame became who we are. Examine your values and edit them to determine which ones make sense for you. Keep those you feel are pertinent to your beliefs and discard the rest. Learn to be attentive and true to those values you keep. Your ability to do so will be the basis of your gaining self-respect. Move quietly away from people who have all the answers and those who freely give advice, blame, criticize, and judge. Those who exude self-righteousness and won't admit to making mistakes won't honor you or your best interests. They see you as an object, not the valuable human being you are. Although they may say otherwise, they will not accord you mutual consideration or respect. Look out for your own needs. Remember that we live in a fear and shame-based codependent society, wherein dysfunction is the rule and the norm rather than the exception. Few people will honor you or your highest good. Most simply don't have the capacity or capability to do so. The majority of people are so preoccupied with counteracting their false selves that their need to prove, justify, or protect themselves leaves them little time for anything else. To counteract the widespread cynicism and sarcasm in our society, I've long had to guard against feeling wrong or bad by keeping my boundaries relatively strong. I can now see why I became so frustrated in my attempts to get from society the validation and support I didn't get from my family. Everyone's on the defensive, convinced that the best defense is a strong offense. I've had to learn that I'm responsible for my needs, not others. Take responsibility. Realize that although we were victims in our childhood, we have been volunteers in adulthood. When we see ourselves as volunteers, we realize we are responsible for our lives, choosing to play our parts. When we blame others for what we do or what's happening to us, we're being victims, stuck in the martyr role. When I blame, I surrender responsibility for my life, giving up my power over myself. Admit that your past is imperfect. Become aware of your relationship to self-honesty and how often you might rationalize and justify your thoughts and actions, using them to mask self-deceit. Rigorous self-honesty is a cornerstone to healthy change, paving the way for self-esteem and self-respect. Most of my life, I've compromised that's best for me in favor of something I felt I needed to do at the time. I didn't realize that when I compromise me or my truth, my self-esteem goes down the drain. It's true that the truth will set us free. However, someone forgot to add that it also will probably hurt us or make us mad. My journey toward an enjoyable real self has been a slow process of self-exposure, first to me, then to trusted others. It became much easier when I realized that I didn't create my demise. I began to look at my actions, not intentions. I learned to embrace the pain of revelation because I knew that knowledge would facilitate my growth. I began to question my motives regarding all of my actions. Did they honor my values? Was I being honest with myself? Was I honoring others? Doing so allowed me to begin to earn some self-respect. And once I gained self-respect, I could value the honest respect others offered to me, instead of debasing myself for a few moments of unhealthy approval. I'm finally coming to understand what unconditional love really means. Unconditional love will be whatever we need it to be, supporting us as our needs, desires, and capabilities dictate, keeping our highest good as its primary objective. It will always be there for us, no matter what we say, know, or do. Having only experienced conditional love, I've had difficulty imagining and trusting those concepts, even though I finally know what they mean. There are universal principles and laws, but they arise out of love, not fear and shame, judgment. They are loving guidelines for healthy and harmonious living, such as we get what we give at the same time. We can cheat and win. Redefine success. Review your definition of success and where it came from. If it involves comparing yourself to others, you're going to be hurt and disappointed. Life is not about winning. One cannot win at life. Life is about living, a process that involves finding, exploring, and understanding yourself, evolving along your individual path. Its goal is enjoyment. My current definition of success involves a quest for inner contentment, peace of mind, and a lifestyle that promotes harmony, joy, and love. It doesn't have anything to do with what others do or become. Is it love or isn't it? I believe the word love is one of the most misused and misconstrued words in our language. The absence of love is so prevalent in most of us. We are inherently vulnerable to the desire to be loved. In being so, we are open to being manipulated. Many times I've heard someone say to another, I love you, under the guise of I need you or I'm using you, but if you think I love you, you won't realize it. Likewise, a comment like, if you loved me, you would, is generally inspired by our desire to have a narcissistic need satisfied by our mate, making another person inappropriately responsible for satisfying our needs. We are either capable of love or we are not. There are no variations. It's either love or it isn't. Many behaviors, like though love, are simply self-justified behaviors used by people who don't have the emotional capacity to do the right thing. Love is the product of emotional strength and resiliency, not weakness. It is a choice and a gift to give. Diffusing toxic people. I couldn't figure out how to confront shaming, negatively judging toxic people who somehow felt the self-righteous need to issue verbal put-downs at me. Having moved past the I'll show you stage, I wanted to avoid conflict or an argument, but needed to deal with them. Now I was only interested in quietly protecting my boundaries and preventing others from shaming me. I had noted that toxic put-down artists are masters of defense, extolling, that's not what I meant, I didn't say that, or I was just kidding. They seem to thrive on defensive arguments, turning them against me, and I had to grudgingly admit they were better at it than I was. The following situation opened up a whole new way of dealing with this kind of behavior. I call it the game of innocent questions. The premise. Many of us have struggled at living, not knowing why. We have not been able to make our lives work for us in a way we feel good about. We seem to continually get involved with or establish unhealthy, self-defeating situations and relationships. We simply don't seem to be able to promote ourselves toward our own best interests and highest good. Although many of us get along well with others, individually we often have a discouraging relationship with ourselves and our Creator, should we believe there is one. Our self-concept is generally not good or it is non-existent. We labor at being okay or enough, and we find it most difficult to attain self-respect, self-esteem, and self-enjoyment. But in our family of choice, we will see that how we feel about ourselves and how we think others feel about us are the results of the treatment we receive and the programming inflicted on us in our childhoods. We will realize that today's fears and shame are illusions carried with us from the past in the form of our false selves. We will come to understand that who we were told we were is not us, but rather a false self inflicted on us, which we believe as real. We will come to know in truth that we are, and always have been, innocent, worthy, talented offspring of our Creator.